world was created 10,000 years ago, and 85% believe in miracles and so on. So and there have been repeated religious revivals throughout American history. So yes, it's a secular society formally, and that's not meaningless. So there's no established church, for example, unlike England, but it has a deep religious and racist undercurrent. So it's hard to characterize it in a single phrase. There's too many complications.
Is Israel a secular state or is it a Jewish state?
It's kind of a little the same. I mean, formally, well, actually, formally, it's both. So, for example, if you look at the High Court ruling, Israel doesn't have a constitution, but it has a basic law, which is like the equivalent of the Constitution. And the courts have determined that part of the basic law is that, this is virtually a quote, that Israel is the sovereign state of the Jewish people in Israel and in the diaspora. So it's my sovereign state, but not the sovereign state of the indigenous population. Okay. Is that Jewish doesn't necessarily mean religious. I mean, in fact, the founders of contemporary Israel were secular. That's changed. By now, especially since 1967, when the society changed pretty dramatically, as did the world. So, for example, take concern about the Holocaust. In the United States, every town has a Holocaust museum. Schools have Holocaust studies. I mean, the Holocaust is a huge thing in American history. Since 67, pre-67, there's almost nothing. In fact, dramatically, and nobody wants to talk about it, right after the Second World War, there were plenty of Jews languishing in concentration camps. In fact, they weren't being thrown into gas chambers. Other than that, it was pretty much the same as under the Nazis. They didn't come to the United States. Almost anybody in Europe, if they had a chance, would have wanted to come to the United States after the Second World War. Jews certainly in concentration camps. They didn't come here. The American Jewish community didn't want them. The American society was so anti-Semitic they wouldn't conceive of it. So probably more Latvian Nazis came here under the immigration law than Jews from concentration camps. They wanted them to go to Palestine. So you have novels like Leon Uris's Exodus, sort of pulling heartstrings about the evil British who wouldn't let them into Palestine. How about the evil Jewish community who wouldn't let them into the United States? There's no novels about that. And in fact, the Holocaust and everything else was very much under nobody wanted to talk about it much until the 60s, in particular after 67. And after 67, there's just an outburst of concern about the Holocaust. Of course, you can't do anything about it, but it's like a defining image of Israeli life and American life and so on. And since that time, Israel itself has become more and more, I would say, dominated by a much more stronger element of religious extremism. That's particularly true in the settler movement. And the settler movement, in a way, dominates the society, not numerically, but in policy formation. In fact, one of the major books, in fact, the major book on it, by Edith Zertal, a historian, and Akiva Eldar, who's Israel's leading diplomatic correspondent. It's called Lords of the Land. It's about the settler movement, and their point is that, yes, they've become the lords of the land. It's quite significant in the Army. The Army used to be, the officer corps and the paratroopers and so on, used to come from the elite units, used to come from the kibbutz movement, which was secular, and at one point, socialist. But that's declined. The kibbutz kids in the 50s, if you're a boy in the kibbutz movement, you'd aspire to be a paratrooper, or a jet plane pilot or something. Now the officer corps increasingly is coming from religious nationalists who pay more attention relation to the rabbis and to the state. And in fact, there has been concern for some years among Israeli scholars, secular scholars, of civil-military relations, that it's not impossible that there could be a religious-inspired military coup based in the secular movement. For example, it could be true if could come about. Nobody knows what would happen if the government agreed to accept the very broad international consensus on a two-state settlement.